Good morning, my name is Jorge Sotelo.
My name is Richard Garcia, and China had many dynasties, but today we're going to be talking about many things that happened in the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty took place in modern-day China. Here's a picture of where the Han Dynasty took place.
As you can see here, the land covered in purple is the land where the Han Dynasty took place, south from the Gobi Desert, east from the Himalayas.
Before the Han Dynasty, there was the Qin Dynasty. During that time, there was a civil war. The emperor at that time was Qin Shi Huangdi. He died during battle. Then Liu Bang, also known as Gaozhou, came and established the Han Dynasty. His reign lasted 7 years, from 202 to 195 BC.
Garcia reduced the taxes of Corvée and he promoted Confucianism and tried to establish marriage alliance between the Han and the Mongols after losing to them in the Battle of Beiding, but failed. This is a picture of Qin Shi Huangdi and this is a picture of Liu Bang.
Let's now jump into geography. The Han Dynasty was known for the geographic expansion that occurred. The Han Dynasty was separated into two parts, the Western or former Han and the Eastern or later Han.
During that time, Emperor Han Wudi's rule marked the expansion of China's geography. He and his army started expanding the land beginning with the defeat of the Mongols and through the advance into the Gyeongsu province of North Korea.
Militaries of the Western Han started invading their neighbors in the north, conquering the nomadic confederation enemies that lived there. Now we'll be transitioning into the Han Dynasty culture. The Western Han that lasted from 206 BC through 24 AD and was known as the first unified and powerful empire in Chinese history.
Did you know that the Han Dynasty had a very rich cultural and intellectual and political heritage that it left behind?
The Han Dynasty culture is a solid evidence of the great things that the Chinese did during the Han Dynasty.
The arts began to gain a lot of status during the Eastern Han period, when the calligraphy and painting were no longer seen as the letter symbol. Ceramics was also developed with the spread of pottery.
Many of the greatest works in pottery were originally from the Han Dynasty. Han emperors and other noblemen adorned their tombs with replicas made through pottery of warriors, servants, concubines, toilets, furniture, everything they needed in the next world.
Living in a city as a poor person was hard because they lived in small crowded houses and most of the time they had no food. Alright, now let's get serious.
Okay then. Merchants were treated with no respect. Merchants were able to become rich by trading. The Silk Road gave the merchants the ability to cross to other lands and have more trade with other people. The more trade, the more money, the more they became rich.
The law demanded them to wear white clothes because white represents brightness, purity, and fullness. They also demanded them to pay high taxes.
The Han Dynasty was known to be one of the most powerful dynasties in China for the inventions that were created at the time. The first and probably the most popular invention was paper. The oldest piece of paper can be traced back to 2 BCE.
The unique tied loom was credited for the most useful invention. Cast iron tools were invented and helped a lot of people by making furnaces which can be used to convert iron ore into pig iron. This success resulted into the making of improved weapons and tools.
Iron tools help agriculture by making new tools that help increase agricultural tax revenue of the empire. Another invention was the loom that set the tone for silk weaving. Silk was sold at an expensive price. Weaving also had a part of the creation of the Silk Road, which meant increased revenue for the people. Now let's get into the Silk Road.
The Silk Road is a trade route that many merchants, travelers, and other people go on. Many people walk on it to get to one place to another. Mainly to increase the trade, the Silk Road is extended more than 4,600 miles.
The Silk Road took part in many stories of famous people such as Marco Polo, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, and more. By the 15th century, the world found out that sea routes were a better way to trade than on land.
The Silk Road was built to protect and give safety to the travelers and merchants who walked on it, protecting them from ambushing enemies. Silk was the reason to why this road was established because silk was luxury and everyone wanted silk. The creations of silk spread it like fire.
Silk from China was mostly traded for gold, silver, perfume, cosmetics, glass, and more. Merchandise along with religion, beliefs, philosophy also traveled the road.
China has been threatened by several enemies back then. Early threats would come from nomadic groups like the Mongols. People were recruited through conscription of obligatory.
When a male turns 23, they must take a year of training and a year of service as a non-professional soldier. They would be placed on the king's court or under the minister of the guards once they become soldiers. A large portion of the army was made up of volunteers.
The military mainly used advanced weapons. Swords were the weapons that many people liked to use because of the advancement of the iron cast. Crossbows were improved to be more accurate and powerful.
The Hans began to adapt stirrups to gain more balance on horses. Because of China's improved weapons, China was able to get rid of their enemies.
Now we will be talking about the religion in the Han Dynasty. The practices of traditions in China helped set the tone for the imperial rule that governed China for a long time. China's religion helped shape the rulers that ruled China. There were many religions that dominated China during the Han Dynasty.
Let's talk about ancestor worship. It has been around before the Han Dynasty. The emperor worshipped their ancestors by expensive burials. People made sacrifices and offerings to their ancestors.
Buddhism is a philosophy. It took root among the royal families. During the Three Kingdoms, Luoyang became a place to translate Buddhist scriptures. Buddhism was more popular in northern China than in the south.
Did you know that literature also became an integral part of the Han Dynasty culture, as it flourished greatly during this era, mainly because of the invention of paper?
Historian Sima Qian wrote the Book of History, the first account of Chinese historian from Huangdi to Emperor Wu. The Yuefu, or the music bureau, began to collect and record ceremonial chants and songs and ballads of common people.
It was during this period that the loom was invented. With that, so it began to be woven for export trades.
It would be an understatement to say that culture during the Han Dynasty was prosperous one, because there's a culture that can compete with the Roman culture's magnificence and beauty.
Indeed, the history of the Han Dynasty culture is something that cannot be overlooked not only by the Chinese but by the world. And now it's time for the open letter. Let's see what we got here. Oh look, an iPod. With this iPod, you can put a lot of music into it. It can also be used to entertain people. Dear people of the Han Dynasty, you guys did not have a lot of technology at your time. You also didn't have many methods of entertaining yourselves.
Today, we have many forms of entertainment. Music was a popular form of entertainment in the Han Dynasty. Music was involved in ceremonial and ritual events.
Concerts were very popular. Some of the instruments that were used were bells, panpipes, flutes, drums, and cymbals. Reading and poetry were other methods of entertaining people. The Hans had vast collection of poetry. At that time, many poets were female. Many of the poems were prose poems, poems that talked about personal and intimate stories. Poems were told orally until the invention of paper.
This concludes our lesson of the day.
And don't forget, SHS Academy students, do your homework.
Yeah, right.